the first book of Samuel, session 39. And we learned in the previous chapter that Saul started fearing David. And this is the general problem we have. We have a Saul in our lives as well. It might be human beings. It might be the Antichrist government that's busy setting themselves up. And it's, of course, the whole dark kingdom that is against us. But even in your personal life, you have a Saul. There might be a struggle in your family, in your house, in your marriage. There might be a struggle within yourself. You might even find yourself sometimes doubting Yhwh. And that is the Saul inside of you. It's like, those pictures you get where the angel on the one shoulder and you've got a demon on the other shoulder. And the one is telling you, trust God. The other one is telling you that you can't see what He's doing in your life because things are just going so wrong, and you are starting to doubt Him, and you don't hear Him anymore. So there's a Saul in your own inner being, and that Saul hates you because that Saul inside of you, that enemy that you have, that you can identify in your own life, you know who it is. I don't want to try to give you examples because you must each one of you identify the Saul in your own life, the one that fears you, that has power over you. But the power he has is not because Saul is the king. Yes, he's got power over David. Yes, he could persecute him for 20 years. But the real reason they hate us is because Yhwh is with us. The demons, the angelic beings, Satan himself, us for being a family for him. And God is the one that receives all our love and not the kingdom of darkness. And they know their end. They know what's waiting for them. They try to avoid it, and they try to take over God's kingdom, to try to avoid the judgment that God is going to bring over them. And therefore they fear Him. They don't fear us. We are weak. We are stupid. We can be killed. We can be deceived. We can be made so tired and so afraid that we just give up. So they don't fear us. They fear Him that has called us by our name. And this whole thing of Saul that was afraid of David because Yhwh was with him, but Yhwh has departed from Saul. And David behaved himself wisely, and therefore Saul was afraid of him. And David was loved by the people, for Saul was afraid of him. And David was loved by the people. He went in and he came out. He was willing to fight for the people. And these are the type of servants of Yhwh, who behave ourselves wisely even when we are undergoing these difficult conditions. And we are still trying to go in and come out and do the work that Yhwh has given to us. And this is the kind of attitude and action and character that makes them fear and hate us even more. Because then, even through trials and tribulations and persecutions and marriage problems and fearing because your family is not following Yhwh, all those souls in your life is not bringing you down. Yes, it pushes you down, but it pushes you on your knees. And you are the strongest in Yhwh, and you're on your knees. And that's why the enemy hates you even that much more. In Saul's instance, it was fear and disobedience, whereas David was obedient and loyal to God. So you've got, on the one side, you've got the fear of the enemy. You've got the disobedience towards Yhwh, where Samuel said to Saul, doesn't God want your obedience more than your sacrifices? Doesn't He want your heart more than your actions? Your actions is supposed to prove what is in your heart. Faith without works is dead. The tree is known by its fruits. So when your acts of sacrifice is coming from a place of an obedient, loving, humble lifestyle, that's fine. But when your sacrifices, like in the instance of Paul, where he brought the sacrifices as a kind of a magic trick to make sure that God gives them the victory in the battle, but he has disregarded God's commandments, that means nothing. That is just going to make Yahuwah depart from you like he did depart from Saul. So fear versus obedience. Fear from their side, obedience from our side. Hatred versus humbleness. Hatred from their side, but we humble ourselves before God, like Esther, who was fearful for the death of her own people under the hand of Haman. Remember, she was fearful, but yet she humbled herself. She fasted and prayed for 3 days and 3 nights. And she humbled herself before God, even though the fear was gripping her heart. And they hate us, and yes, they've got power, and yes, the people and the spirits are over us is only because they fear us. And it's interesting looking at how the Antichrist government is being set up, and there's a specific needle that they started using, 2-3 years ago, with which this system is being set up. And I hope you know what I'm talking about. And it's amazing how Saul also uses a sharp object to try to kill the beloved David, beloved of God. And now this enemy system has also used a sharp object to try to, poison us, because they fear the humanity that will not become their slaves. And it's amazing, Yahuwah teaches us through Yeshua in Matthew 10, Matthew 10 verse 16, he says, "Behold, I'm sending you as sheep in the midst of the wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." David the beloved, he was innocent. He still loved and respected Saul, although Saul tried to kill him. David was wise. It says in verse 15 of 1 Samuel 18, he behaved himself wisely. And because of his wisdom, Saul hated him even more. And because of his love for God, Saul hated him. And he tried to kill him with a sharp object, like this Saul kingdom of today is trying to kill humanity with a sharp object. Yeshua is the one that teaches us to be humble and wise like serpents, humble like doves, and to be like the Esthers and the Davids of the world, and not fall when the enemy keeps on trying again and again. It says Saul cast the javelin, and David avoided out of his presence twice, because it doesn't stop, and it's not going to stop. Presence twice, because it doesn't stop, and it's not going to stop. And that's why endurance until the end is needed. Yeshua says in Matthew 10, they will hand you over to the courts, and you'll be brought before governors, and you'll be a witness to them and to the Gentiles because of my name. They will hand you over. Don't worry about what you will say, because on that day the Spirit of the Father will speak through you. Brothers will betray brothers, and father children's, and you'll be hated because of my name. But he says in verse 22, "But the one who endures to the end shall be saved." David was hated because of the name of Yahuwah, because he trusted in God, and the name of God was written upon him, and it was taken away from Saul. And Saul hated him because of Yahuwah's name, because Yahuwah was with him. But David endured to the end, and disciples who was like David's. He says in John 17:14, "I have given them your word, and the world hates them, because they are not of the world anymore, just as I am not of this world." Because like I said, the enemy knows what you are busy with. The enemy knows the promises and the covenant that God has spoken over the people that return to him out of every tribe, nation, and tongue. And if you return to God, then the enemy knows exactly what you're busy with. And he knows what God is busy with through you. And he knows how God's whole restoration plan is busy to take shape. And they hate that. They hate you for that. Because if God's kingdom is slowly but surely being restored, it means the end of their kingdom is also near. Jonathan said to Saul in chapter 23 verse 17, 23 verse 17, "Do not fear my father. His hand will not find you. You will be king over Israel, and you shall be the king over the kingdom of God, and I shall be next unto you. And this also my father knows. My father knows that I love you. My father knows that you're going to be king. My father knows that he's not going to be able to kill you because God is with you." So the enemy knows that God has anointed Yeshua, and Yeshua has anointed us with his ruach, with his word, with a heart that is circumcised, with an ear that can hear and shema. And the enemy knows that they cannot kill us. They can kill our bodies, but they cannot bring the eternal death over us like the serpent tried in the Garden of Eden. And therefore their fear and their hate is even the worse. So Yahweh was with David. All of Israel and Judah loved David. And verse 17, "And Saul said to David, Behold my elder daughter Merab, for her I will give to you as a wife. Only be valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him." So we remember that because David defeated Goliath, the promise of the king was that the man that will defeat the giant will marry his daughter. So after David fled from him, the last time he tried to kill him with a javelin, with a spear, and he started fighting Saul's battles, and he became this amazing general. Saul had no choice. He had to give him his daughter because he promised that in front of the whole congregation, in front of the whole army. And that willingness to fight in God's kingdom, that willingness that David had to fight Goliath. Even in David, we don't get comfortable and we don't get arrogant and thinking we are God's beloved. You know, we are fine now. We are in his kingdom. We are strong. Remember when David fell in love with Bathsheba and he killed Bathsheba's husband, Uriah. What he did is he couldn't himself sort out the problem. So what he did is he sent Uriah into battle so that the enemy could kill Uriah. And I think it's almost like, you know, what the enemy did to David. When David got to the point where he broke Yahuwah's law, where he went and allowed his own fleshly nature to overtake this humbleness and this obedience and this love we learn from him that he has for Yahuwah, when he allowed his own fleshly nature to override those emotions and that convictions, and he slept with Bathsheba and he killed Uriah. He killed Uriah in the same way that Saul wanted to kill him. Saul said, I don't think I'll be able to kill him because Yahuwah's with him and the people all love him. So I'm going to have a bit of a problem here. So let me send him into the Philistine battle all the time. Let me send him to the front lines of the battle and let the Philistines then kill him for me. And although that didn't succeed, in the prophetic and in the spirit, in the spiritual realm, this that Saul did to David, David did to Uriah. And it's an example here for us that we mustn't give up. First of all, not give up against the enemy that's outside of us. But most importantly, not give up against the enemy that's inside of us. Fight the soul enemy inside of him. Even years after Saul, the physical Saul was dead. The spiritual evil inclination of Saul was inside of David when he allowed his eyes to betray him and to make him sin against Yahuwah. And that Saul he didn't defeat. And the hatred that Saul had for him through Satan's kingdom actually manifested, and Satan had his victory in David's life when that Saul inside of David stood up and killed Uriah. Let the enemy kill Uriah, and he took his wife, he stole his wife. So David said unto Saul, Who am I, and who is my life? What is my life? or my father's family. What is my father's family in Israel? That I should be the son-in-law of the king. What is my father's family in Israel? That I should be the son-in-law of the king. See how humble he is. Yeah, not even claiming the reward that was promised to him. He didn't go to the king and say, hey, king, remember, you said you're going to give me your daughter. I killed Goliath. Here's his head. Give me your daughter now. He didn't claim that. He waited for Saul to give it. But it came to pass at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel, the Meholatite, and she became his wife. And here I always see the messianic picture, of the wedding of the Lamb, of the bridegroom and the bride, of Messiah with his church. So David the beloved, because he fought the enemy for his people, like David was willing to give his life for the sake of God's name and for Israel, Yeshua gave his life for the sake of God's name and for God's people, Israel. For the lost sheep of the house of Israel that he divorced, and that he is the bridegroom of, and that she can be called the bride and she can be given. And then out of that, as so many of the prophecies in the Bible said, the seed of Abraham will be multiplied into all the nations of the earth. And out of the multiplying seed, I will multiply your seed like the stars of heaven. And out of every tribe, nation, and tongue, a multitude of people will return back to Yahuwah. And especially after the first resurrection, it's a number that cannot be counted, that is standing before the throne of God, praising and worshiping Him. And the Old Testament prophecy says that at the place where it was where they were called not my people, they shall be called my people again. And it will be said in the streets of Jerusalem, make place for me, because there's not enough place. We are being cramped here. We are too much. We are too many, because of the multitude of God's sons and daughters that is brought back from the edges of the earth back to His kingdom. And how amazing is it that in the Hebrew, this bride that was promised to David, her name was Merab. And we, as the bride that is promised to Yeshua, in the Hebrew, her name means increase. Her name means multiplying. It even has the meaning of myriad. And if you can remember, when the ark was set down, then Moses said, return, O Yahuwah, to the myriads of thousands of Israel who is waiting for you. I hope you've done those studies with 2 trees in the book of Numbers. So Merab has got the meaning of to cast together, like the 153 fish that is caught together and cast out of the nations in one net, out of the ocean in one net, and the net will not break. To increase in number, to multiply, to be manifold, to be more, to be thousands, and to be 10,000s. So this bride that is promised to David, David is the humble one. The bride is the one that represents the increase. Yeshua is the humble one. And his bride is the seed of Abraham that has increased like the stars of heaven, and that will be gathered back together in his hand, so that the marriage supper, the wedding, was given to Adriel. Unfortunately, God's bride, the woman that is promised to be married and to become one family again, she's given over because of her idolatry, because of our getting lost into all the Gentiles, being scattered because of our not being loyal to Yahuwah. The myriad of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob got scattered into the Gentile nations. She became the bride of Satan. We worshipped idols. We bowed before Christmas trees. We ate the abominable things because we disregarded His word, His law. We didn't love Him with all our hearts and wrote His law on our hearts. We became Gentile pagans. We got scattered into every Gentile nation, into every religion, into every sun god tradition. And like the whore of Babylon, into every religion, into every sun god tradition. And like the whore of Babylon who fornicated with the kings of the earth, so humanity did the same. And it's only out of those that returns and wash themselves with the blood of the Lamb and the water of the word. They are the true bride, but they come out of the bride that is given over to the enemy. And that is why Yeshua had to die, to redeem his bride from this marriage with the enemy. The moment Adam and Chava turned their back on Yahuwah's commandments and disregarded his voice and his words and stopped trusting him and started trusting another and listened to the words of another, they became the bride of the other one, of the enemy one, of the evil dark kingdom ruler, prince of the earth and ruler of the world. And that's why Yeshua had to die back into the covenant of Yahuwah. So the enemy has always hated God and Yeshua, and that's why they thought they had the victory when Yeshua died, because the enemy, just like Saul wanted to kill David, the enemy wanted to kill Yeshua. And that's why Moses, in the time that Moses was a baby, all the babies were killed, because Satan worked through the Egyptian Pharaoh to try to stop Moses from being born. And the same spirit was trying it again in the time of King Herod, trying to stop Yeshua when he was still a baby by having all the baby boys killed. This kind of spirit that was forcing Saul to try and kill David was not only because of his fear and because of his jealousy over David, but it was the evil spirit working through him to try to stop the Davidic line, the Messianic line out of which Yeshua had to be born. Because the battle that the humans are fighting, when we look and we understand and our eyes are circumcised and we understand the bigger picture, we see the bigger battle that is being waged against God himself through his people. And here the enemy government system hates the government system that God anointed. David was going to replace Saul. So Saul's government system hated David's government system, and it's still happening today. And the government system wanted to kill David with a sharp instrument. And later on, the government system wanted to send David into battle to be killed there. And the same government system has basically stolen the bride of God. The serpent stole God's people in the Garden of Eden. And so Satan is stealing God's bride. He's been stealing her since the beginning of time, and he's still busy with that. So David was supposed to get married to Merab and have the increase and the multiplication and the tens of thousands of the seed of Abraham through his loins, continuing further to fill the number of the children of Israel. But unfortunately, that number has been scattered into the Gentiles, and that's why the New Testament says the house of Judah will remain blind until the fullness and the full number of the Gentiles has come in. So although Merab is given to the enemy, we know the final plan of God is for Merab, for the increase of Abraham's seed to indeed be part of the wedding feast with, the beloved, the son of David.